All right, so let's bring it home here with the final segment. First of all, again, I just want to say thanks for everyone who hangs out and listens to the Sooner Nation podcast. I think with this last segment, I want to talk about Oklahoma's surge in the polls. I think it becomes harder and harder to ignore what Oklahoma's doing on the field. When you look at 50% of the wins are over top 25 opponents, regardless of the quarterback situation, I think you have to say that Oklahoma is officially back in the conversation. Saturday's win over Auburn, the Tigers were ranked number 22. And what I was saying in the previous segment, Oklahoma gets rewarded for that. Because they've not just catapulted into the top 10, they're up to number 7. And it's first time in more than 2 seasons that they've been in that top tier of the coaches poll. So you've got them sit at number 7 in the AP, number 10 in the coaches poll. And Oklahoma's rise, it's not coming from hype. Texas Longhorns. It's not coming from like the hype of what you expect, what you hope. Because remember, they were not even ranked in the coaches poll to start the season. What you're seeing Oklahoma's rise is a direct result of earning it from the wins, earning it from answering questions, and producing a defense that's really beginning to look like it is legitimately elite. And when you look at what Oklahoma's done, it's clear why the pollsters, the voters, it's clear why they're buying in. And you open conference play with a win over a ranked opponent. And I think that alone would be enough for some teams. But then you do it while recording 9 sacks, by setting a program record, while holding the Tigers to just 67 rushing yards. And then you show this extra reserve of toughness in the fourth quarter. And that all adds to beating a top 25 opponent. And again, here's why I keep saying it doesn't really matter a quarterback at this moment, because the offense has not been perfect all season long. Now, it's been stable when it's needed to be. And John Mateer, under pressure, he keeps his composure. And that produces big plays when the moment demands them. And now you've got to see that transition from him to Michael Hawkins Jr. for a month. But you pair what they did Saturday against Auburn with what they did a few weeks ago against Michigan, and you've got a resume here for Oklahoma. You've got a resume that carries weight. And voters are going to reward that. So, Sooner Nation, this poll, it's not an endpoint, I don't believe. It's confirmation that more eyes are watching Oklahoma. It's confirmation that they're gaining attention. So why does this matter? It matters because being ranked in the top 10 changes everything. First, it increases scrutiny. Every play, every penalty, every turnover becomes magnified. Just look at the Auburn situation with the Satina touchdown. And things that once may have been forgivable, they become costly. When you're top 10, losers are going to sting harder. Expectations are going to rise higher, and media coverage is going to widen. So because of that, your margin for error shrinks. But then also with that, perception begins to do the heavy lifting for you. The polls, they're going to influence bowl matchups ultimately. They're going to influence playoff seeding. They're going to influence recruiting. They're even going to influence scheduling down the road. And they're going to influence television exposure. When you look at schools with consistent high rankings, and when they build momentum, it goes beyond just wins and losses. They build confidence. There's this buzz around them, and there's this belief in who they are. And that's what you're seeing with OU. It's more than just a morale boost. It's a validation of the work under Brent Venables. It's being recognized that the defense in particular, it's no longer a question mark. It is a strength. Now, with the good also comes the warning signs. And there's a big, fat, glaring one when you talk about Oklahoma. That's turnovers. This is a program, for as good as they've been through 4 weeks, they've yet to force a turnover. And at the same time, they've committed 6 on their own. Now, like we talked about in the previous segment, so far opponents have only turned those miscues into a combined 9 points, which is amazing. But that also, at the same time, doesn't guarantee safety. Because everybody knows, longevity, everybody knows a turnover margin wins close games. And when you talk about this conference, comebacks and swing plays, they happen every weekend in this conference. And a lack of takeaways is a vulnerability that honestly can be exploited. Another concern becomes the run game. It's still not shown up. You've got one game where they cracked 100 yards by a back, and that was Temple. In Auburn, granted a talented defensive front, but they held Oklahoma's ground game in check. And the passing game's been working, right? And so when the passing game works, that helps. But I mean, do you want to rely every week on late game drives and defensive stops? Is that something you want week after week? Because that's a heavy weight. That is a burden. I think eventually Oklahoma is going to have to find a way to be balanced offensively. And especially when you look at some of the defenses that are coming down the pike for this team. I mean, let's talk about the schedule, right? It is rugged. And now that Oklahoma is ranked highly, it has to carry this momentum, right? And the upcoming opponents, they're going to look at that and go like, top 7, top 5, top 10, whatever. And so now Texas, it's already a rivalry game. It could be a top 10 rivalry game based on what the Longhorns do with Florida. South Carolina is going to try to work its way back into the top 25. I mean, you just on down the road. It is heavyweight after heavyweight after heavyweight. So beating Auburn was huge on Saturday. But also with beating Auburn now comes more expectation. And Oklahoma is a team that they have to be, with this expectation, they've got to be more consistent. They've got to find a way to be more dominant. Because you want the poll rise to be consistent as well. You want it to be lasting. Now let's look at what's working for Oklahoma. The one thing that they have going for it is probably the greatest thing they have going for it, and that's the defense. Where this front 7 has become the centerpiece, the identity of this team. Sacks, pressures, tackles for loss. Those are not statistical flukes. Those are signs every week that Oklahoma's defensive identity is not just real, but it is deep. I mean, look, you look at the rotation against Auburn on Saturday. You got, R. Mason Thomas not even there for the first half, and yet you had 6 quarterback sacks in the first half. This is a defensive rotation that steps up. Depth is not just, depth's not just a thing that they have. Their depth is effective. They have effective depth. And again, that's the kind of performance that resonates with the voters. That's the kind of performance that leads to success. And now you got, going back to the question mark, because it has been working for them, but now like what happens next? Because John Mateer's leadership is something that has stood out, especially in big moments. You got to replace that. But the good news is you've got receivers that are making contested catches. You've got special teams doing their job. They're, field goals, flipping field position. And those supporting pieces, they don't just help preserve leads. They create momentum. They help you avoid collapse. And when a game becomes tight, those are the things that matter. And when you're looking at a new signal caller for 3 to 4 weeks, that's huge. because it's the supporting cast that Michael Hawkins Jr. is going to have around him. So looking forward, the big question is this: can Oklahoma convert what they now have, this momentum and poll recognition, into sustained dominance, even with the backup quarterback? The good news is it's not going to take us long to figure this out. I mean, the next few games, they're going to tell us. If OU can find a way to run the ball more efficiently, if they can keep Michael Hawkins Jr. healthy while Mateer is, working his way back, if they can find a way to avoid turnovers instead of just giving the ball away, and then if they can maintain this defensive pressure, there's no reason they can't maintain or even keep climbing. And the Red River rivalry, it's looming. That's the kind of game that defines seasons. If Oklahoma shows up strong after, subduing Auburn and taking care of Kent State and Michael Hawkins Jr. looking improved, Oklahoma's no longer going to be looked at as being an up-and-comer. They're going to be looked at as a real threat. And man, this bye week, it comes at such a good moment. Because the John Mateer story takes front and center, but there's other guys that are going to need to be healed up a little bit. There's other guys that are going to come back. You can polish the edges, so to speak, with your offensive and defensive schemes, and you can shore up some of these areas of concern. But I think more importantly, Oklahoma has a chance to look inward now, right? They believe in who they are. They believe they belong in the top 10. And it's not like they're trying to prove it. They don't care. They believe it amongst themselves. But then with that comes the discipline, the penalties we saw on Saturday, the mistakes we saw on Saturday. Those are the things that tend to haunt teams with high expectations. And they can use this bye week and then Kent State to figure out how they can avoid self-inflicted wounds. So here's my final take here on this. Oklahoma's rise in the polls, it's not a fluke. It is deserved. They have taken the big risk through four games. They've made big plays through 4 games. They've shown toughness through 4 games. But keep in mind that poll rankings, they're not trophies. They're markers. It's like a signpost. And OU is at one of those markers right now. How they proceed from this moment forward is going to define whether this year becomes legendary or just becomes another year of what if and near misses. For us as Sooner Nation, this is a moment to just enjoy, to savor it. But it's also a moment to stay vigilant because the top 10 is sweet. But the real wins happen when you earn them under pressure. October and November, that's bringing pressure. When expectations are the heaviest, that's when it's coming. And it's right around the corner. Oklahoma does not take the field again until the month of October. But if they hold everything together, if they remain defensively dominant, if they can become opportunistic offensively, if they can be resilient mentally, it's not just a season that people talk about with hope. I'm legitimately telling you, this could be a season that people look back on and they say, this is where it all changed. This is where Brent Venables finally began instilling the quality of team that we thought he was going to instill when he arrived 4 years ago. This is when Oklahoma jumps back up, not just on the center stage of the SEC, but center stage nationally. And we're almost there. Almost there. Thanks again for hanging out with us. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll be back more to talk later on. Until then, you can find us on the website, heartland-sports.com. Boomer Sooner, everybody.